to be speaking to this group. My printed thing says this morning, but actually this afternoon. People who find their joy in serving other people. I have a nagging suspicion I'm on the wrong side of the microphone here, that you may have even more to tell us about finding joy than anything I can say to you this morning. I'm going to start quite far back in time with the minor prophet Habakkuk. In chapter 3, verses 17 to 19, Habakkuk tells us, "Although the fig tree shall not blossom, neither shall fruit be in the vines, the labor of the olive shall fail, and the fields shall yield no meat. The flock shall be cut off from the fold, and there shall be no herd in the stalls. Yet I will rejoice in the Lord, I will joy in the God of my salvation." Isn't this a bit odd of Habakkuk? We know bad times happen to everyone, and we expect the prophets to tell us to have faith, maybe to have hope, but to rejoice, isn't that a bit excessive? The Message translation, a more modern translation of the same passage, is even bolder. "Though the cherry trees don't blossom and the strawberries don't ripen, though the apples are worm-eaten and the wheat fields stunted, though the sheep pens are sheepless and the cattle barns empty, I'm singing joyful praise to God. I'm turning cartwheels of joy to my Saviour God." Turning cartwheels? Really? For what? Because joy isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. For us as individuals and for our society. In good times, but most particularly in bad times. And here is someone else who could not be more different from the old Hebrew prophet, who seems to be saying exactly the same thing. Valerie Kaur is a young lawyer, mother, writer, a third-generation US citizen. I brought her book with me to show you, because as soon as Shelley told me there would be a lot of teachers here, a small panicked voice went off somewhere in the deep recesses of my head, saying, "If you don't have visual aids, they'll mark you down." So, Valerie belongs to the Sikh faith. Sikh men have to wear turbans. It's part of their religion. After the Twin Towers were blown up on 9/11, there was a bad hate crime backlash in America against all Indian, Arab, and Muslim people. Against Sikhs who wore turbans. It was terrible, and it lasted a long time. And many of those Americans who murdered, assaulted, and burned seemed to genuinely feel they were just doing their patriotic duty. Valerie was in the thick of the response to the backlash, first as a young student and then as a practicing lawyer. She labored for 10 years, trying to build bridges across the hate, trying to get legislation to protect the vulnerable, trying to comfort her own people in their grief, and trying to educate other people. It was a very dark time for her, and at the end of it, she had this to say about joy. "In the face of horrors visited upon our world daily, in the struggle to protect our loved ones, choosing to let in joy is a revolutionary act. Joy returns us to everything good and beautiful and worth fighting for. It gives us energy. I believe laboring in joy is the meaning of life. May we look up at that night sky. May we let joy in. For we will be someone's ancestors one day. And if we do this right, they will inherit not our fear, but bravery, born of joy." Joy is for us as individuals, but it isn't just about us. It's about people around us and those coming after. What Valerie Kaur wanted to achieve was a world in which difference was welcomed, in which, as the title of her book says, we would see no stranger. Martin Luther King had a dream of people living well together that he called beloved community. He wrote, the end is reconciliation. The end is redemption. The end is the creation of a beloved community. It is this type of spirit and this type of love that can transform opposers into friends. It is this kind of understanding and goodwill that will transform the deep gloom of the old age into the exuberant gladness of the new age. It is this love that will bring about miracles. What a wonderful phrase exuberant gladness is. Every time I use the word joy in this talk, will you just transform it in your heads to exuberant gladness? But joy doesn't just transform societies. It also changes us as individuals, our physical selves. And so do those companions which so often travel with joy: gratitude, hope, and wonder. Different emotions involve different structures in our brain, different chemicals, different hormones. Joy releases dopamine and serotonin in our brain. Gratitude also produces serotonin and dopamine. They are good for our circulatory system, our breathing, our digestion. Dopamine is the brain's pleasure chemical. Now, outrage also produces dopamine, which makes us all about choices. Do you choose to get your dopamine hit from outrage or from hope and gratitude? The brain also, by the way, produces dopamine when we look at flowers. There is a specific area of the brain in the orbitofrontal cortex associated with hope, an area which shields the rest of the brain from negativity. Hope causes the brain to produce endorphins and enkephalins. One of the people writing about this area, Terry Small, says, "I believe hope is as vital to the brain as the oxygen we breathe." Awe and wonder also have physical effects on the brain. Areas that influence attention, memory, and emotion are all involved in the experience of awe. Awe brings us a sense of interconnectedness of the self with the world around us. It promotes other-oriented, pro-social behaviors, feelings of positive social emotions, such as compassion, generosity, and altruism, and it decreases aggressive responses. Clearly, we were made. Our brains were shaped, if we so choose, for joy and hope, wonder and gratitude. But there's a snag. There's always a snag. And this snag has to do with transport and transfer of information. Apparently, it takes 15 seconds for our brains to transfer good news into emotional memory, and no time at all for us to process bad news. The neurologists call this negativity bias. A simple way of putting it is to say that our brains are Velcro for bad news and Teflon for good news. The bad things stick in our minds and the good things slide out. Unless we hold on to the good things for 15 seconds. Now, 15 seconds doesn't sound like much time at all, but let me show you something. I want you now to think of something you did that made you really proud of yourself. You did a good thing and you felt good about it. Hold this thought for 15 seconds. I'll tell you to close your eyes, and 15 seconds later, I will tell you to open them again. Oh. Close your eyes, please. Ooh. Please open your eyes. Holding on to joy takes effort, which is a paradox because joy is fleeting, it's ephemeral. It requires us to be absolutely present in the moment, to walk away from the regret and rage of the past and fear of the future and simply be here, now. One of my favorite online preachers, Lutheran pastor Nadia Bowles-Weber, who has the most beautiful tattoos, wrote recently about going what she calls off-grind, leaving all her previous measures of success, stopping a frantic schedule of writing and speaking engagements. She wrote, "Living off-grind allows me to have so much more curiosity about other people and so much more openness to discovering new things in life to love. And friends, there are so many things to love in this life. So many. But when I am not myself," writes Nadia, "when I am too busy impersonating previous versions of myself, I shut myself off from discovering them." Curiosity is an important avenue to joy. Valerie Kaur wants us to wonder about every stranger we meet. To wonder, what part of myself is there in you that I haven't met yet? Joy is contagious. Sometimes we catch it from other people, sometimes we give it. Sometimes it comes as a gift from a stranger. The other day I was in our local fruit and veg, and I noticed a young black woman looking very striking in a grey tracksuit and a red top and a very jaunty red hat. So I said, "Pardon me, but I just have to tell you that you look lovely." "Oh," she said, "this is the uniform of the modern farmer. Look at my boots." I looked down and she was wearing very sturdy, very muddy boots. She explained that she farmed herbs and was in the shop delivering a consignment of her produce. I turned to the cashier